Okay, we're going to get into part 2 over destroying your retroactive jealousy or jealousy about her past. I'm Paul, Apex Mindset. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell, get on my email list. The link is in the description. Okay, and hit the like button if you like the video. I will put references in the description of the video as well, such as part 1. You will need to watch that. I know it's a little bit longer for some of you, 45 minutes or so, but it gives you some foundation. If you're interested in learning more about retroactive jealousy, I got a couple other videos as well that'll help give you a foundational understanding. Okay. But first thing is part of the things you need to know if you're just tuning into the video is that jealousy for a man is not an insecure feeling or thought necessarily. Okay. It doesn't come from insecurity. That's a myth. All right. That society wants to tell you in order to shame men into accepting female behavior that, isn't desirable. All right. Jealousy, whether in the present or jealousy over her past, actually is a primal drive. All right. It's a protective measure, and it protected men from mating with women who would kill the offspring in favor of going with another more alpha male, or, cucking, in other words, sleeping with someone else, having someone else's baby, and then having a guy, take care of that baby as if they're his own, not realizing it. So there's a number of protective things being, having your offspring discarded by a woman or whatever. Back in ancient times, that was a real issue. And so that's where these drives come from. It's an internal drive. All right. And so it's a protective measure for us as men. So you have to understand that starting off. Okay. Now, in the first video, I covered the 3 things you need to do, and I'll go over those real quickly again. One is you need to determine that you are, in fact, her apex alpha, that you are her best, okay, and that she has the ability to pair bond, all right? So that's the main thing here, is that she can, regardless of her past, you need to determine, does she have the ability to bond with you in a healthy relationship, have a healthy neurochemical response, okay, so that she can be with you and be good with you, and does she see you as her best? Those 2 things need to be satisfied, or really there is no relationship to be had. So if you're jealous and have jealousy issues and you can't satisfy those first 2 things, that's your jealousy issues telling you that there's a real problem. Okay. That's your instinct actually working for you, and you need to resolve that. And that usually means resolving it by ending the relationship. Okay. You don't have to be with somebody who doesn't see you as her best. That's the bottom line. And I don't recommend that. I recommend you showing up, being the best version of yourself, okay, and being the best guy you can be. But if being the best guy you can be isn't somebody that she's going to see as her best guy that she's ever been with, or the best guy that she could be with, then there is no relationship. She won't love you. She won't have those feelings for you the way that you would want, you know what I mean, as a man. And so you don't want to give your commitment away to that. You want to move on from that. I don't care if you find yourself married 10 years with kids together. If that's the reality of it and you can't fix it or solve it within the relationship, you're going to have to move on, or you're resolving yourself to being a prisoner to this woman's desires and needs. Okay. Which is not a way to live for any man. So that's main thing that you need to know going into it. In the first video, we covered that. We covered learning about her past, not in a way to cure your anxiety. So you don't want to interrogate her about her past stuff and go down the rabbit hole of all the details, but having an adult conversation about your sexual history, yours and hers, is not something that you shouldn't do if you're considering a commitment or something long-term. That is something you should do, because each of you need to know at least enough to know what's important if it can work out together, right? You need to know what you're getting into. And, you never expect somebody to buy a car without the Carfax, or to purchase a product without researching its history or whatever, So why would you expect to get in a relationship like that? Now, of course, what's more important is her current frame of mind and her current state, right? In her current development, not necessarily her mistakes, but those mistakes are part of her. And we say mistakes or just experiences. Those are a part of her, and you need to understand to really fully know her and to know and satisfy that question that you have right now, which is, are you her best and can she pair bond? You obviously need to have the right amount of data for that. So you need to be able to approach that in a non-judgmental way. I explained that in that first video. And then sexual dominance, right? You need to execute sexual dominance. We are talking about sex here when we're discussing retroactive jealousy, more so than anything else. So you need to know that you're her sexual best, okay, the best she's had. And that means that you need to execute great sexual experiences with her. You need to re-imprint her in such a manner that all of her other sexual experiences are more of an embarrassment or more of something that she doesn't really want to look back on, okay? And that way, when she looks at you, she's seeing, what she's proud of and what she's happy with. And understand, if you're her apex alpha, that is the case, all right? Because women don't just have sexual variety in the way that men do. Men, are pretty indiscriminate. We're indiscriminate in our sexual variety, right? Women are looking for the best guy that they can mate with. So if they feel like they're worthy enough to have this best guy that they can mate with, then anyone below that, all the other experiences, are really kind of an embarrassment then, you see? Now, if that best guy for her to mate with was 2 ex-boyfriends ago, and it's not you, well, then you're the embarrassment, okay, for her to be with, along with the rest, at least to some degree, okay? And if she's not sure, well, she's not sure who the embarrassment is. It's still not a good place to be. But you see, if you're her best, then everybody else becomes somewhat of an embarrassment. Not that she's going to hang her head in shame or, expect to be ridiculed for her past experiences. Actually, she'll defend herself if that's what's happening, or she feels like that's what would happen to her, right? Because women don't want to be bad chimps, as I call it. Okay, they don't want to be seen as bad, right? So they'll defend things if they think that that's the case, but ordinarily, they're not even wanting to discuss those things because those experiences are less for her than where she's at now with you. All right, so that's the framework that you need to have with her and develop so that the relationship can be successful. And now from that point, all we're dealing with is your emotions and feelings of retroactive jealousy, which are coming from a primal drive. You can deal with your own feelings in a healthy manner without putting them on her in an unhealthy way when you know that the first criteria is satisfied, which is that you're sexually imprinting her in such a manner that those other experiences don't matter. Okay, you're her sexual best. You're the best she could ever be with. And she does have the ability to pair bond, meaning that she has those neurochemicals and the reaction, in order to feel bonded to you. So those things are the things to, satisfy. So once we've satisfied that, now we're going to get into the next steps. And this is when you're in the LTR, okay? And this, a lot of you guys realize or come across the fact that you're jealous of her past as I say jealous, I don't know what else, but you have that feeling of disgust and anger over her past, okay? Is a really better way to describe it, because jealousy is kind of a container word, really, in the sense of it doesn't mean the same thing when women discuss it, okay? But it's that feeling of disgust and contempt and anger even towards your partner over her past. That's the feeling. A lot of you guys find that this feeling happens as your emotions grow for her, you see? And so as you become more emotionally invested in her, now these feelings start happening, and they weren't really there before that hardcore or at all. And so that's what a lot of times happens. The guy's, dating her casually or whatever. He vets her out. She's a good match, gets in the LTR, the relationship, and now those feelings start cropping up like 3 months, 6 months later. A lot of times they crop up when things are really good too. So when things are elevated, going really well, now you have all these feelings and you're like, crap, what is this coming from, right? It's your instincts telling you that this could all end and this could fall or blow up in your face. Now, those instincts are not necessarily correct. In fact, if she meets all the criteria I mentioned, meaning can pair bond, sees you as her best, right? And you've re-imprinted her sexually, then there is nothing that'll blow up because of her past anyway. It won't, if it blows up, the relationship blows up in your face, it won't be because of her past experiences, okay? But because the global sexual marketplace is the way that it is, women have had so much more variety and so many more notches in comparison to our history, right? So on a genetic, instinctual level, we're prepared to handle a handful of partners and a handful of experiences when women today are having way more experiences than that. So we are put on overdrive in our instincts, right? And this is why you have those emotions or feelings. So the first, thing to do was to see if those feelings had any merit to them. Now, assuming that you satisfied all the criteria, we can say, okay, there's no merit to these feelings now. These are things that I need to deal with. So that being the case, number one then is to recognize that this is your problem, okay? Either you can satisfy, either the criteria is satisfied, which is your sexual best, she's pair bonded to you, and you've re-imprinted her sexually. Either that criteria is satisfied or can't be or can be satisfied, or that criteria is not satisfied. And that's it. If the criteria is not satisfied, you need to either leave the relationship, okay? Or the other option, which I don't recommend, is settle in a relationship where a chick doesn't care about you that much and doesn't love you. All right? So one or the two, okay? But I don't recommend number two. I don't care if you have kids involved. I don't care if it's expensive to get divorced. I don't care. Okay, you're resolving yourself into a miserable life. That's a recipe for disaster. This leads to dudes putting a gun to their head, and we don't need that, okay? What you need to do is find somebody who does see you as her best. Be the best version of yourself so you legitimately and objectively can be that, and meet somebody who can pair bond well to you. That's what you need to go find, okay? So either you satisfy the criteria or you don't, and you need to decide that. And if the answer is, okay, the criteria is satisfied, that means that the jealousy issue you have is your problem. It's not her problem to solve, okay? This is something you have to solve within yourself. She cannot cure your anxiety. She cannot make you feel better, okay? I mean, she can do things to not make you feel worse, sure, right? Not say things, not do things over boundary, okay, or out of bounds, okay? But that's just regular boundaries that even if you didn't have retroactive jealousy, you would have those boundaries to begin with. Like it's a boundary for me, for an LTR, not to talk about sexual experiences, like especially depending on the forum we're in, but talk favorably about other dudes sexually, let's say at a party or around other people. That's a hard stop for me. That's a definite no for me. Okay, but that's a boundary, whether or not I feel jealous or not. That's just disrespectful, right? Yeah, she has to still maintain the boundaries that you guys have in your relationship, but out of respect for you and out of respect for the relationship, but it's not her job to solve your emotional difficulties you're having with this. All right. And it may not be your fault. It may be a primal thing, but you have to understand this is for you to solve. And that's the first step, is to realize that it's your problem. Either you stay in the relationship and it's your problem to handle, not hers, or you leave the relationship because it can't work out. All right. And as I said in the previous video, nobody expects you to accept anything from a woman. You don't have to accept her past or current behavior. That is perfectly up to you as to what you're willing to accept and what you're not. But understand, if you stay in the relationship, that means you're accepting her past for what it is. And now it's time to move on. Okay. So that's the first thing. All right. Now, the second thing is, though, you have to be resolved that if the criteria that I mentioned prior, the minimal criteria, ever changes or becomes evident that that's changed, then you need to be resolved to exit the relationship. So if you find out 10 years down the line in a marriage with kids, for example, that she had an affair when she was prior to you and it was her best sexual experience she's ever had, and she misses that guy and that's her apex alpha and all that stuff, guess what you need to do? Exit the relationship, okay? You spent your fair amount of time and due diligence in the beginning of the relationship trying to learn about her and having open discussions about your guys' past. So if you're finding out things later that's already a problem. That means she lied to you and withheld information, which is dishonesty through omission. Okay. And so if she did that, that's already a problem. Now, is it a deal breaker? Well, if you find out that she can't pair bond, if you find out that you're not her sexual best, if you find out that all the sexual imprinting you've been doing or re-imprinting just hasn't taken hold because she had that, I don't know, experience with 3 guys at the same time in Cancun when she was younger, and nothing was ever more intense than that or whatever, and you find this out later, you get what I'm saying? Like, if you find something out or something changes, you need to be prepared to leave. And that would be regardless of your feelings of jealousy or not. If you're staying, once again, your problem. You don't get to beat her up over your emotions over this. All right. So no more getting mad and getting upset with her and talking about some guy she used to bang. Okay. No more of that. No more digging for more information. No more punishing her because of her experiences she had in college, right? No more of that. All right. That's not healthy for relationships. You can't go backwards and change what she did. All right. She can't go into a time machine or whatever. Okay. And she can't go inside your brain and fix your emotions and fix your primal drives. That's for you to deal with. So you don't put that stuff on her. It'll just create a toxic dynamic between you two. And that toxic dynamic will be your fault if you're doing that. Okay. It'll be on you. So don't do it. Now, the third thing is although the jealousy is your problem, her past is 100% her fault. Okay. So I'll say that again. Her past is 100% her fault. All right. Now, why is that important to recognize? Because everyone, society is here to try to push men into being into situations that just doesn't serve them, and to being a slave and a wage slave, both to taxes and the economy, as well as, that's a political statement, I realize, but whatever, but as well as to a woman, right? Like, we're supposed to trade in as men our imperative, our desires, our purpose for some woman's goals and ideas, and be a facilitator for her dreams, instead of being on our own purpose, achieving our goals and dreams, and having you complement her life and her complement your life, which would be the healthy way. Society wants to push men into just accepting things. Listen, her past is her fault. Okay. Every experience that she chose to get into is not only, it's something that she chose to do, and the consequences of that are her fault. All right. Now, she may have she may not experience the consequences as you're experiencing them. She brought you her problems. You see what I mean? She brought you the consequence of that. Okay. That's really important to recognize, because, and this is, step 3 in the LTR. So you had 3 steps in the last video. You were on 3 different steps. All right. But it's important for you to recognize that it is, and I'll read from my notes so don't stumble over this too hard. She is 100% to blame for the things sexually that would damage your future and cause harm to herself and you, and would be left for you to handle and fix. Okay. She's 100% to blame for that. It doesn't matter if she didn't know you when the events happened. It doesn't matter if it was unintentional. It doesn't matter if she had poor guidance. Okay. Her actions of the past effectively victimize you in the present. All right. In the sense that you're left with the burden of fixing the damaged pieces of yourself and the relationship, and dealing with any of her baggage over it because of what she chose to do in the past. She created a problem that she can't actually fix, because this leaves a mark on your emotions and in your psyche. This leaves that mark there. You have to fix it. So she created a problem for you in the relationship with her past behavior that she cannot fix. She left for you to fix. Okay. Now, the reason why this is important to recognize is because you need to have your frame here, that if you choose to take her on and to do this, which is something you don't have to do, all right, you have no responsibility to accept this. You have every right to kick her to the curb over her past behavior, so you don't have to deal with it. Every single right. Cool. You had a guy bigger than me? Go find another guy bigger than me. I'll see you later. You had a guy taller than me? You had a guy a little bit better looking than me? You had that experience, this experience is a little bit more exciting than what I could do? Cool. I'll find somebody else that is just as good looking as you, but doesn't have that baggage. That could be your answer. If you choose to not take that answer, then she needs to be grateful for that at the very least. Now, here's the thing. Women, they generally won't be grateful for it. They generally won't realize or be willing to accept that her past behavior, whether she intended to or not, affects her present relationship. But if she can at least look back at those situations of her past as being beneath her, at the very least, okay, whether that is embarrassment or, a little bit of regrets or whatever, not that she should accept being shamed for it, right, or getting beat up over it or whatever, or being, publicly ostracized for her behavior or anything like that. We're not saying that, okay? But if she can look back and go, you know what, this stuff is not the same caliber of what I deserve and what I have now. If she can at least look back at that, that's a good thing. But don't expect her to do that. Don't expect her to understand this. Don't expect her to understand what I just said. If a woman is listening to this video, she's going to retract from that statement most likely and want to argue with it and want to disagree with it. Okay. But it's important as a man that you accept it, that you understand it, because you're being told by everybody else that you're a piece of crap for having these feelings about her past. And that's bullcrap. That's bullcrap. You have every right to be a little bit pissed off because you just have a problem dumped into your lap that you didn't create and that she can't fix. Of course, that's an injustice. So being angry and having a little bit of contempt for that is normal. Accepting that is a step to getting out of it. All right. For me to sit here like all these other videos out there, and the reason why I'm doing this, by the way, is because the other videos and information on retroactive jealousy is insufficient. Okay. At the very least, or straight bad advice in a lot of them. All right. They don't want to recognize this. They don't want to say this part. So I'm going to say it because you need to hear it. She created a problem for you that she can't fix. Right? That's an injustice. You have every right to be angry about that. Every single right. Okay? And recognizing that is a step in the right direction. It's an important step. Being able to overcome this, okay, is to recognize that it's not your fault. And it is in fact her fault. All right? And that although she won't see it, she needs to be grateful and thanking her lucky stars. If she does see you as her apex alpha, she needs to be grateful that you are accepting her and all of her in all of her past. She needs to have that gratitude. And she might not really recognize it or understand it. Hopefully she has gratitude for you for all the other things you bring into her life. All right? All the other things that you supply her with as being that alpha male in her life. That's where her gratitude lies. And that's really all you need to take it. You don't need to get her to praise you with thanks for accepting her, hoe phase in college. That's ridiculous. I'm not saying you need to do that. You don't need to get this confirmation from her because she won't get it. She won't understand it. Women are solipsistic. They have a hard time with empathy over what a man goes through. And so you do not accept it or expect that from her. Okay. But what you need to at least recognize is this isn't your fault. It is your problem to solve. And it's not going to be solved by you beating her up over it. However, it is a problem that she created, and that by you staying in the relationship, you're doing her a favor. All right? You're doing, especially if you're the apex alpha for her, you're not some beta little dork, all right, that she's settling with. If you're the man that she really wants to be with, then you are giving her a gift, okay, by staying in the relationship and choosing to work and having the courage to choose to work on your feelings and emotions and primal drives of jealousy versus kicking her to the curb, right? Because you could very easily do that. And so that's a really important step, okay? So again, recognize it's your problem. be resolved that if you ever find out that you're not her best or that she can't pair bond, that you get out of there, get out of that relationship. And the third thing is recognize that it is in fact her fault and not your fault that this exists, and that she needs to be grateful for you going through and getting over this. Or she should be. She won't be because she won't understand it, but at least recognize that she should be. Okay? That gives you the power that you need in the relationship and that you should have. That's rightfully yours, okay, as a man. And then the last thing I'll get into this video, number 4, is to forgive her anyway. All right? Don't expect her to admit or even realize how her reckless, bad choices have harmed you in the relationship in the current. Don't expect her to understand the feelings of contempt and anger and frustration and anxiety and all those nasty feelings you have and disgust when you hear and learn about these things about her. Don't expect her to understand those emotions that are coming from a primal place, because she won't get it, okay? But you need to realize, okay, that she doesn't understand. Realize that it's not your fault. It is her fault, but you need to now forgive her for it. All right? Do you have to forgive her? No, you don't. You can leave the relationship. But your options are not to stay in the relationship. This is not an option. You don't stay in the relationship and then not forgive her for it. Do you understand? Because that's a toxic dynamic. And now you'll be the toxic person if that's the case. So don't do that. All right? Don't do that to her. Don't do that to yourself. Okay? If you can't be in a relationship with her without forgiving her for her past and for her behaviors that she's not even sorry for, because she doesn't even realize the effect she's had on you. Okay? And she doesn't even realize that this isn't her fault and doesn't have any regret over it, possibly. Okay? Then, again, you'll have to leave that relationship if you can't do it. But otherwise, you have to forgive her for it. And that forgiveness is something we'll expand on in the next video, because I think that's the hardest thing for guys to do. But once you can get to a place of forgiveness with this, then we can move into some other things that we need to address to get rid of it for good. All right. But I want you to contemplate that final step for a little bit, and then we'll cover it more in the next video. All right. Because it's quite a bit and can get quite extensive, but that forgiveness is what is required. You can't, even if she's not sorry, even if she has no remorse for it. All right. And if you can't do that, if you're not unable to do that, then it's not going to be working for you in a relationship, because you can't punish her for her past. It's just not an option. All right. So I'm going to stop there. I want you to think about those 3 steps. All right. And think about the steps from the previous video. If this is the first video you're seeing on the topic, go do some homework. All right. This is a lot of work, and part of the work is watching these videos. Share this with friends. Share this with people who need it. And I'll talk to you next time.